Welcome back to the Mersey Game podcast. The first episode, we're talking about everything in Merseyside to do with sport. We're touching on football. We're touching on everything golf. We're gonna start off by introducing everyone. We've got Holly in the top left corner. We've got Dylan. We've got Joe, Rita, and myself, Deck. We're gonna start off with Liverpool, of course. Football. We all love football. We're gonna touch on Liverpool first. Dill, do you want to talk us through that game? How did that go?
Well, it looks like a good result for Liverpool. It puts them top of the league, but if you actually watch the game, it was awful performance. But 2-1 to nick it at Selhurst Park isn't. You look back at it, it's not a bad result to get the 3 points. But as Jurgen Klopp said, it was probably the worst 76 minutes of the season up to now until Salah got the goal back. I think the red card was probably the changing point, but I think Liverpool will take it. You know, put them top of the league at near enough Christmas. Not bad.
Yeah, I mean, the last few weeks they've moved away from the rivals towards the top of the league. Arsenal slipping up quite a bit, and City as well. City have been poor.
Yeah.
But we're going to touch on VAR. Obviously, the red card. There was two yellows for Jordan Ayew. What did you think of that? Do you think they made a meal of it, or do you think it should have been two yellow cards?
It's probably one of them where if you look at the referee rule book, it probably is 2 yellow cards. But when you watch it as a football fan, you can't look at that and go, you changed the game completely over two incidents like that. It didn't feel just, but I mean, there's nothing you can do now.
Yeah, Rita, obviously VAR has been introduced the last few years, and it's obviously caused a bit of chaos over a few weekends in the Premier League. What have you made of that?
I think it's been a pretty mess like recently in the Premier League, because we've seen in other leagues it has been well used, but not in the Premier League, because sometimes they call it, sometimes they don't. Maybe we saw in the Tottenham Liverpool game that they released the audio, but there's a mess from the VAR studio and then from the referee on the pitch, so it's still a mess, I think.
Yeah, Holly, obviously you've been to a few. You've done some reports on lower league games. You got Stockport and Wigan last week. What have you made of, like, obviously there's no VAR down there. Would you bring that back to the Premier League? Would you try and avoid VAR?
I think it's interesting because obviously there is parts of the Premier League that it does help, like, goal line technology, stuff like that can really make a difference to games. And if there's a decision that's been made unfairly, then it is a good thing. But when you watch lower league sports quite a lot, then you start to notice that it's like the diving stops, and people are trying to like play to VAR basically, which just makes the quality of the football go completely down. So I really enjoy watching lower league sports because VAR is not there.
And can I just add to that, guys? Obviously, I know VAR is a big talking point at the minute, but you also look on Saturday as well, the decision that went against Sunderland for their disallowed goal. If VAR's in the Championship, that goal's getting awarded, and it wasn't at the weekend. So I know there's a lot of these VAR people that want it gone, but for me, it does have to stay involved in the game.
I agree with that. I think you're totally right. Some of the decisions you get away with down in the lower leagues, it's quite ridiculous. But obviously, we're going to go back to Liverpool. Joe, while we're on the topic, do you think they can win the league?
I think they're in there with a chance. Obviously, like Dylan said, it wasn't a pretty performance, but I think Liverpool this year have had a lot of games where they maybe haven't dominated, but they've still managed to come away with most of the time 3 points. And I mean, Liverpool fans will probably be hoping that the quality of the football improves, but as long as results are being picked up along the way, I think they're in with a great chance for the title. Yeah, how do you see Liverpool going this season?
I mean, it's going to be close. Obviously, I think City are expected to win it, but I don't think Arsenal will be in there by the end, but I think Liverpool will definitely be in and around it, and they've got the players. Obviously, Holly, we can see your Liverpool flag in the background. Would you like Liverpool to win the league this year?
Well, so would, but like you said, Joe, it's like I think that is when teams are really seriously in with a chance of winning the league, when they can actually have games where they're not playing their best, but they still come away with 3 points. And when it completely changed the game, when Gakpo and Harvey Elliott came on, it just completely, changed the side, and they looked like re-energized. So I think if you can have a bench like that, where you're starting 11, maybe they haven't played their best game, but then you can bring players on and they completely change the dynamic, and he's still come away with the result, I think that is when he's seriously in with a chance of winning the league.
As a total neutral, Rita, what do you make of it? Do you think Liverpool will win it, or do you think City and Arsenal have something to say about it?
I think they have a chance, honestly, but I think City will win their next games because they didn't win a game like in 4 games in Premier League, but I think they will come back. So I think it will be a race between Liverpool and City. I don't see Arsenal winning it, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And obviously on the topic of the Premier League, we're going to switch to Everton, Liverpool's main rivals. Holly, big result for Everton this weekend. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it was a huge weekend for them. They were 2-0 to Chelsea yesterday. The Corey Dolan both scored in the second half. And I think it's a really interesting time for Everton because obviously they've just come out of the relegation zone for that 10-point reduction. And I think Sean Dyche has proven himself as a manager right now because they're coming away with these huge results, 3-0 against Newcastle. What a massive win for them. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting time for them. They're doing really well. They're playing amazing. So yeah, really good weekend.
Joe, you were at the game.
Yes, I was at the game last week, and I was really surprised and really impressed with Everton. I remember saying on the podcast last week that I don't think Everton would stay up. I think exactly a week on, I think I'm going to have to flip and say that I do believe that Everton will stay in the Premier League. Obviously, they beat Chelsea at the weekend as well. Newcastle and Chelsea, 2 teams maybe not on the greatest form, but
2 clean sheets as well.
Yeah, but Goodison Park was absolutely bouncing last week. It was incredible.
And do you want to just touch on? I mean, last week you were talking about the atmosphere before the United game, and it was a bit toxic.
I was, yeah.
What do you think? Why has it changed?
Well, it was still the same sort of stuff. The obviously Premier League protest, and it did get a bit nasty at points. But I think the reason it changed going to that Man United game, they were 1-0 down in the space of a minute or two. So, and then obviously Everton, they hung in the game, took it to the 70th minute against Newcastle and managed to go 1-0 up, and then the goals were just absolutely flying in. So I think with the Everton players performing, I think the sort of protest they're doing will be a bit more positive because they obviously need to pick results up along the way. So, yeah.
And obviously they've had the points deduction. Dale, what did you make of that early last week? What did you make of it?
It was obviously a statement from the Premier League. But the thing is, they're going to have to keep up with the same precedent if these 115 charges for Manchester City come through. I don't know how they're going to count up the point deduction for that. For when you're giving 10-point deduction for one charge, 10 points can make or break your season. I mean, I don't think it's going to do for Everton because I think they're good enough. I think there's 3 teams that are way worse than them. Well, there's definitely 3 teams that are way worse than them in the Premier League. But it's just whether the Premier League stick with the precedent they've set, really.
Yeah, and obviously it was a -10. We did an article, and 83% of football fans believe that Everton will stay up. Are you surprised by that, Holly?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm surprised because I did think they'd stay up, to be honest. But it's interesting to see what people think about it. And I think the biggest thing that we noticed when we were going out and speaking to people in Liverpool was the fact that people were saying, if they're going to do this, like you said, Dylan, if they're going to do this to Everton, the one charge, they've got to keep the same standards for City. And I just don't believe that they will. They're saying they need to wait for investigations and this and that. And it kind of looks like they're just letting the big clubs off with it. The ones that have got money can get away with it, and the ones that haven't don't get away with it. That's just not fair. It is corrupt, and that's not how our league should work. I think it's really lowered, the standard of the league in general and how people look at our league. When you've got teams that are getting away with really, really bad things because they've got money, it's just backwards.
This section, we're just going to talk about the results, our predictions for the results next weekend. Liverpool have got United at home, a massive game, big rivalry as well. I'm sure it'll be an exciting game. And then we've got Burnley, have got Everton at home. Everton are flying at the minute, so anything could happen there. But yeah, we're just going to start off with some predictions. Rita, do you want to go first? Maybe touch on Liverpool versus United?
Yeah, I think it's a tough game because Liverpool obviously won the last games especially the last one last year, 7-0. But I think it's always a big fixture. So United will have a go and we will see. And then about Everton, I think they will win again because like the 10 points deduction was like a boost for their confidence. So I think they will win again.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be massive. I mean, Holly, what do you think that 7-0 last time out is it's got to affect the Man United players, especially after losing against Bournemouth at home on the weekend?
Yeah, 100%. And also going into a game at Anfield when Liverpool are doing so well and they've just got to the top of the league, so they're going to be, on fire, I think. And yeah, I can see Liverpool coming away with a win, but I do think it'll be another one of them games that we've seen so much this season, which is like we'll go 1 or 2-0 down and then we'll get it back at the end.
Yeah, Dill, what's your prediction on the 2 games? What are you thinking?
Liverpool United, I think there's a lot of conversation about it being a walkover, really, with United being in such bad form, but it does feel like one of those games where whenever it's a derby, whatever you think is going to happen doesn't happen. I think Liverpool they'll have to come back from 1-0 down. I think United will take a goal and then Liverpool will probably scrape a draw at the end. And Everton, I think they'll carry on with the form. I think it's got to be a win.
Yeah, I agree with you on Everton. I mean, you've got a bold prediction there with the United game. I'm not too sure myself if United have got the ability to score at Anfield. I think they'll really struggle there. But Joe, finally, do you want to round us off?
Yeah, I'll round us off, and I'm going to save the best till last. They do say I'm going with something a little bit different today. Me personally, I think people are really underestimating Ten Hag and how he's got these Man United players playing. I think Man United are going to take something at Anfield. And Burnley, Everton.
Yeah, Burnley at home.
And I also, yet again, think Burnley are going to take the 3 points. So I'm going with Man United to beat Liverpool and Burnley to beat Everton.
And obviously, it was a success for the Everton men's team this week. It was also a success for the women's team, who won 1-0 away at West Ham. Joe, do you have more to tell us?
Yeah, it was a terrific victory on the road. Karen Holmgard off the bench. She scored a lovely goal from a very well-worked set-piece routine. And yeah, they've got some great away form, 3 wins and 1 draw. So they're unbeaten on the road. But yeah, it was terrific.
Yeah, that's superb. And obviously, Liverpool women, their rivals, who they play early next week. How did they get on, Rita?
They drew against Bristol City at Prenton Park, and it's their second unbeaten game at Prenton Park because they won 4-0 against Brighton last time. And now they await Everton at Walton Hall Park for the Continental Cup after they lost against Manchester United by goal scored by Nikita Paris. And they lost 3 games in a row in that competition. So now they're still waiting for a win against Everton in the derby.
And obviously, yeah, it's a big derby this week. Holly, you went to the last Merseyside derby at Anfield. What do you think they can take from that into this one?
Yeah, it was a really good game, actually. It was great to see them play at Anfield. There was quite a big crowd there. It was a really good atmosphere. It was a shame Liverpool didn't get the win whilst they were playing at home. It was 1-0 to Everton. Captain Megan Finnegan scored. I actually went to another Everton women's game at home against Brighton earlier in the season, and she scored again in that. So I think she's had a really good season. But yeah, she scored the winner. Missy Bokern scored in the first few minutes, a great goal, but it was offside, unfortunately. Yeah, so shame they didn't get the win. I do think that Everton might come away with a win again this weekend. It is at home for them as well. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and obviously Holly's given Everton prediction. Joe, you think Liverpool are going to win, don't you?
Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree with you, Holly, if that's okay. When I watched Everton the other day, I thought, yeah, they played okay, but against bottom of the league West Ham, I'd have hoped they'd have cruised past them, and that wasn't the case. The Everton keeper made some terrific saves to take the 3 points home. So I'm backing Liverpool in this one.
I agree with you there. Rita, do you think Liverpool will win, or do you think Everton can make it back-to-back wins?
I think they have a chance because in the Women's Super League, they are doing so well. They're 5th and they're 3 points away from Manchester United. So I think they have a chance, but it's a derby. So everything can happen, but I think Liverpool have a chance.
Yeah, and obviously we've talked about women's sport. We've talked about this week on the website the rise of women's sport in a backgrounder. Myself, Holly, and Dylan were a part of that. Holly, do you want to start us off? How was that backgrounder for you, and what's the significance of it?
It was a really interesting backgrounder that we did. It's on the rise and the growth of women's sport. We spoke to a few different people on it. And I spoke to Hannah Mahon, who's the vice captain of the John Moores women's basketball team. And she was speaking a lot about how not only is she seeing growth, the trials this season were the most well attended that they've had. She's seen that growth in women's sport, but she was also talking a lot about the pressure that girls have on them to look good when they're training and when they're playing, and that can actually put a lot of girls and women off getting involved in sport, which is quite sad, really. But she mentioned that campaigns like This Girl Can are really helping with that and helping to change the stereotypes and get more women involved. And I think we kind of noticed that, obviously, Dylan, you'll speak about your part, but we noticed that in general, a lot of people are seeing a rise and a growth in women's sport, but obviously that isn't the case for everyone.
Yeah, Dill, do you just want to touch on why you didn't see that?
Well, I spoke to a Uni of Liverpool volleyball player, and her experience really went against the statistics and the grain. And he was describing how, if anything, she's seen a decrease in participation of women's sports recently. A main point was around how she believes women don't see sport as being as much of an important thing in their life as maybe men do. She was talking about how girls might miss training because they've got their friends around, or say they've got some work to do, they might miss training. But I mean, it was a really interesting one to see someone go against the statistics and go against what is the general opinion of the rise of women's sport.
Yeah, obviously, generally, we've seen a rise in everything. My bit was about the spectatorship, and there's so many numbers coming into the game. Rita, you've done multiple articles on our website. What have you made of the spectators there?
Yeah, I spoke to the LJMU basketball captain team, and she was surprised about the presence of spectators and of young girls attending the game. And she was also impressed by girls approaching the sport because they saw more people are approaching basketball like in the trials, and they are becoming a very competitive team. So they are doing a good job this year.
Yeah, and obviously we're going to move it on to other sports as well. We've touched on quite a lot at the minute. The weather's been awful this week, but it hasn't stopped the golf too much, has it, Joe?
No, well, actually, it has stopped the golf. There's obviously the weather's not been ideal, and it's meant that the flying LJMU golf team sadly couldn't play this week. And this season they're on some terrific form. Obviously, we've got the Christmas break coming up, so they'll be playing back again in January. But yeah, no golf updates for you guys this week.
But obviously the weather's not ideal for golf, but you don't want to be sending them out on frozen pitches or anything, do you? Because then be yourself and health and safety issue.
No, you don't. But I think the thing that's important, obviously with this weather stuff, in certain sports where games are getting called off, possibly sometimes just for the sake of it, I think we've really got, obviously we have to take into account the physical danger of the weather, but maybe young children playing football for their Sunday league team, if their game's cancelled, what they've been looking forward to all week, I think it's sad that some people won't be able to go out and have a kickabout due to the weather restrictions.
And obviously it was a massive event. They've raised so much money, but there was a bit of a health and safety risk at the event. One of the boxers was knocked out in the first round. Joe, what did you make of it?
Yeah, well, obviously that's what we all go for. First round, big knockouts. But I think in this instance, these people they've not been training their whole life like some of these pro boxers. And when they both walked out, we thought, blimey, are these two actually going to be fighting each other? We knew what was going to happen. And this guy was just wiped out in the first round. And we've got to be looking at the people at the ultra white collar boxing, because them two should never have been matched up together. Holly, I know you weren't there, but I know you've got a little bit to say on this. So
yeah, I think it was interesting listening to I'm a Celeb the other night. Obviously, Tony Bellew came in second last night, and he was speaking the other day a lot about head injuries and boxing and the safety of it. And it was quite sad, really, because he was saying how he's kind of accepted the fact that it is going to come back to haunt him. I think he said that on average, he would have been punched around 1.1 million times in the head over his career, over his 12-year career. And I think it's something we've got to look at, not only in boxing, but in sport in general. It's there in rugby, in football. And yeah, I think it's a really big concern in sport at the moment. And we're seeing it more and more as these professional footballers and these professional athletes get older. You start to see the effects of these professional sports.
Yeah, we've got a lot of Liverpudlians in the city as well supporting Paddy Pimblett in the UFC this weekend. Rita, would you like to touch on that?
Yeah, you also talked about brain injuries, about his last win last year that caused him a brain injury. And he has now a fight against Tony Ferguson on the 17th of December. And he's trying to win again, but he's talking also about brain injuries. So.
Yeah, Dylan, have you got any prediction for that fight? Do you have any insight?
Well, I think it's probably a make or break fight for Paddy Pimblett. Obviously, after his last fight, I think he got quite a lot of stick for how he took the win, which, I mean, it could have gone either way. But I think with his sort of cocky personality, when you just scrape a win like that in your last match, you're gonna get some people pushing back at you. And he's coming up against obviously a legend of the game in Tony Ferguson, who won't go down easy. He might take it to the last round as well. So it's going to have to be a big performance. And if he can get away with a win, then it could really kickstart his career in going for belts and titles.
Yeah, from one niche sport to another in England, we've got American football. Rita, we've seen the LJMU team have been playing recently. You've wrote a few articles on the website. What have you made of their performances?
They won their last 2 games against Union High. They won like 15-6 and then against Manchester Metropolitan University. But they didn't start the season in the best way possible because they lost 38-0 against University of Leeds. But then having a chat with the coaches, they stated that they found their way back. In fact, they did. So they're contributing to the race of American football in the UK thanks to university scholarship and also the Uni of as a team. And they are contributing to the race of this sport.
Yeah, obviously we've got some articles on the website for that, so you can check that out if you'd like to. Holly, you've had one on Wigan versus Stockport in the EFL Trophy early last week. I know we're going back to football, but how was that game?
Yeah, it was a really good game, actually. It was played at the DW Stadium in Wigan. It was the EFL Trophy. 2-0 to Wigan, ended up being Smith and Morrison scoring in the first half, and that secured the game for them. Stockport, really, I mean, they didn't really get into it. They had a few chances in the first half, a few free kicks and set pieces, but nothing that was really anything to note. And I think, they were coming into it, the underdogs, but it is a shame that they haven't been able to make more of it in the competition. Wigan are going to face Doncaster away in January next, so that'll be interesting. And yeah, it'll be good to see how far Wigan can go in that.
Yeah, obviously that's a massive game, and Wigan's a big rugby town. Dill, you're obviously a big St Helens. You've followed them a bit, and you've also done some articles on Sefton rugby. What have you made of some of them?
Well, I have to say I haven't been to many grassroots rugby games. I don't know whether any of you have, but when I went, what really struck me was it was such a professional performance from Sefton. It's tactically they were taking full advantage of the penalties Lee were giving away, and Lee was putting a good performance. But I thought Sefton were brilliant at taking advantage of the mistakes that Lee made, and especially away from home. I thought it was a really good performance. It was a high level of rugby for how low a level it looks like on paper.
Yeah, touching on the professional game, there's been massive news earlier this week with the St Helens head coach. Joe, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, he's been fined £2,000 for basically blaming the RFL of not looking after and not caring for their players. So that was some of the breaking news this week. And to be fined £2,000 for just trying to look out of his team, I don't see how that's happened.
Yeah, it's very harsh.
It is harsh.
Rita, obviously the safety of head injuries is a main concern everywhere. Obviously, you talked about American football, obviously earlier on, but they have a lot more protection when it comes to like headgear. Do you think rugby should take that up?
Yeah, there are rules in American football about safety, so they're really concerned about this. But we know there are rules all over the UK, so they have to stick to them. And where there's no protection, I can understand that someone has to talk about it. So.
Yeah. And finally, going to round this off now with the badminton this week. Obviously, LJMU have played quite a bit. We've had some other badminton in the Liverpool area, but the one game really stood out to you, Joe, no?
Yes, it did. It was the doubles matchup against Bangor University. it seemed like a bit of a derby. There was obviously a lot of respect. We know badminton's a very respectful sport, but there seemed a bit of tension in the air, and LJMU cruised through and took home a 3-0 lead. So yeah, the LJMU badminton, just like the golf, are absolutely flying at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, local sport in Merseyside is absolutely flying at the minute, and obviously we're gonna have so many more articles coming up on the website in the next few weeks, and there's so many already on there. I think there's 40 plus, so you can go and check them out. But yeah, we're just gonna round this off for the podcast this week. It was a great turnout, great review of some of the games that everyone's been to. But yeah, we'd just like to say thank you and tune in next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.